When I saw this post pop up on my Instagram feed by the Clark County Public Arts account, I was pretty intrigued. I never went to many places in the deserty landscape of California that weren't just that on the freeway going to like Burbank or LA. And I'm always down to go on a little trip, but a $5 little trip to look at art installations in the Coachella Valley with, water and such provided, sign me up. And that's what I did. Just to prepare for this trip, one of the recommendations was to bring a blanket and pillow. I think I'm just going to go with blanket because I don't want to bring too much stuff. And I don't mind if this gets lost or whatever. And hat. Because hat with a strap, because you never know if it's windy, but also you're going to need a hat because the sun. And I got this neck fan because, oh boy, I know it's going to be hot. 2 Cliff Bars because, the white chocolate macadamia and cookies and cream, they're both like non-dairy, no egg in them, I believe. I hope so, right? Really saying things. Let me. Of course, sunblock because sun's be out. And we got a charger and the battery pack. Deodorant because I don't want to be smelling crazy funky or whatever if it gets too hot. Not that I think I stink, but it's like, of course, like if you're gonna be out in the sun,
I wanted to bring my little lanyard. I didn't want to put too many heavy weighing metal enamel pins on here because these will heat up in the sun. These 100% they do heat up. So I don't want to put anything too heavy, but I wanted to get more thematic. So no fandom stuff here. It's just my usual pin that I put here for Luke 12:27, but also those I found on my desert journeys, such as Alien. Oh yeah. So the lanyard is this rainbow lanyard from Alien Fresh Jerky that I bought in 2024. Yeah, because I wasn't able to go to the Alien Fresh Jerky this time coming back from TFCon LA because it was all rainy and stormy. But anyway, this is where the lanyard comes from. And so we got like an enamel pin from there, as well as from Peggy Sue's, which is a diner that can be seen on the way from Las Vegas to California. And of course, California pin, and a little pin from the Caprio Marine Museum, which is one of my favorite places ever, the Caprio Beach. But then also we got here on the Nevada side, got Red Rock Canyon over here, and this little cowboy possum that my sister gifted me, and one of my favorite pins, which is a pin based on LAS, which is the, what is it? Not McCarran, Terry Reid Natural Airport. No, if I'm correct, it's not McCarran, it's Terry Reid. And this is the code for that airport, LAS. So this is my lane that I'm also burning eyeglasses wipes. I really anticipate that I'll be drawing because I really just want to be in the moment. And plus, I don't have any tiny sketchbook. Everything is pretty weighty, and I don't want to carry too much stuff considering I got all this already. But I brought I have some postcards, some index cards with a pencil just in case, but I really don't think I will. Of course, we got sunglasses, water bottle, because hydration. All right, so peep the fit, my messy hair. It is like 150. All right, check it. Here's the fit. It's 1:50 a.m. Here's the messy bat. I don't think I'm going to go to sleep on the bus. I'm not going to really fix anything formal because it's going to get flat because it's no makeup because also I don't want to be feeling like I have stuff on my face. So white undershirt and a loose cardigan and shorts, but then shorts under those shorts for like, chafing or whatever because I'm not going to be going like annoying chafe. I'll find one of my team. So yeah, like good. So now we have me tennis shoes on. Okay, so Sunset Park is a very sizable park in the southeast part of the Las Vegas Valley. The roads aren't complicated, but if you're me, you're not like super familiar with the layout. And I wasn't sure what exactly was the park admin building that we were supposed to meet up at. So I'm just following the map best I can, and I just assumed the building over here was the meetup. And this park is definitely closed at 3 a.m. So like, to imagine what it looked like at that night, imagine this pitch black screen that I'm showing you right here, right? The only thing you can see was what was directly in front of you because, your car is lighting up its own light. But there's no methods of like navigating where you are otherwise. And Imagine wondering if the meetup was real at all, since there wasn't like a single building with lights on, there's no street lights or anything like that. Except, well, what I imagined was security, with police cars parked behind this building with the lights off and everything. But after a few doubts, I found out where I was supposed to be meeting up, solely due to seeing like these tiny lights blinking in the distance, and with the height and position of what I imagined would be for a bus. And when I got closer, I was right. So yeah, I was dropped off and somewhat relieved I wasn't the only one who wasn't sure exactly what was going on, but I was surprised about this bus. Oh wow. Hello. Oh. Good morning. Wow. What a fancy bus. I did not expect that. Guys, look at this bus. Like, it's only for $5, but like there's like a... Oh, you can't see, huh? In the darkness. Wow. This fancy bus. Oh my gosh, guys. Like, what? Hell yeah. The itinerary, because like we were literally told not that much about what's going to happen. So here's like where we're going to go. So really excited. I didn't look up anything. I just wanted to see how was it going to be like. And there were a grand total of, I think, probably 11 people on that bus, including the 2 bus drivers. And soon we hit the road, and eventually the city lights began to fade and it became open road. But not before we got to see some interesting roadside incidents. There was like at least 2 pretty big ones. Yeah. I would continuously be on and off sleeping, but mostly awake because I really wanted to see the landscape pass us by, this familiar desert to me, but from the passenger's point of view. And our first stop was in Barstow Station, which, you might guess it, was in Barstow, California. As there's a running train nearby, it's stationed to look kind of like a little mini train station. Personally, I didn't see a need to get out, so I kind of just stayed inside the bus eating my cookies and cream Cliff Bar and just waiting till we headed out again. And not gonna lie, I was kind of disappointed with this cookies and cream flavor because I'm not a huge fan of chocolate, and it just felt like chocolate protein powder and a bar. It was kind of gross, but it was like, fine, I'll eat it. I paid for it, whatever. But of course, sooner than later, it was time to hit that old road to go to places we never went before. In my case, deeper into the desert.
Whenever I just spend my time looking out into the desert, I'm just so curious about all the little houses or suspiciously planted, not natural trees that definitely surround a house or two. I'm just curious what those are about. Like, what's it like living there? Why would somebody choose to live there? How is the night sky? Do you see all the stars in the sky? I just get very curious about it, dude. Like, I would totally do it if I was able to. At least try it once. Or at least visit one of those houses once. But, yeah.
So up till this point, this was the route we were going down, but around the Lucerne Valley area, it changed. From what I can assume, we were meant to keep going down this desert route all the way to Palm Springs, but even I can feel the super bumpiness and the remoteness of this road. That would not spell that great for the tires of this charter bus. So the ship changed course and we headed westward back to the 215, which is that one singular road that makes really easy travel from Las Vegas to SoCal, then going back east later. And personally for me, I had to look away because it's the same route that I would take going to like the beach and TF Conolay and such. And it was like when we're passing Riverside and Redlands, it's like we're so close. I'm so close to going to the beach. But no. We were not going to the beach. We're in fact going into more desert, a desert terrain that I'm sort of used to as far as the aid stacks. And I was like, oh, I had to chill. I had to close my eyes until we headed past Yucaipa into more of unfamiliar territory. Despite the detour, we were like way ahead of schedule. Like these 2 bus drivers, they know how to drive and they know how to get to a place fast. Let me tell you what. I knew we were getting closer, not just because I was looking at my Google Maps the whole time, but we saw these windmills. Like, there's so many windmills in this part of the valley for some reason, and palm trees. So yeah, sooner or later we arrived at the visitor center, which was in fact a sign that we hit the first stop. Yeah, our first stop at the visitor center of Palm Springs, and sure there are a lot of palms. No lie. We walk into the first stop. I forgot what that part was called, but we walk in it. And yeah, so we're going to the first stop. I forgot what it's called, so I'll put it on the screen or whatever. But look at how cool this place is.
Now I want to take a pause to say I didn't do any prior research to going on this trip about Desert X, Palm Springs, and so on.
Partially, I just kind of ran out of time to do all that, and partially because I was kind of hoping that the host of the trip would do like a little talking about that, but that didn't necessarily happen. The Desert X installations all had a way to access information though. Each installation had a sign that stated the artist's name, the name of the art installation, the GPS coordinates to get there, and a QR code which led to a web page on the Desert X website that has an accompanying video as well as a small essay about each art installation, their context, their meanings, their materials, and so on. Given that the temperature fluctuated between 95 to 101 degrees Fahrenheit, my phone got hot real quickly. And well, when phones get hot, they stop working or wanting to work, especially when it comes to like recording video or taking pictures. So I figured it'd be better to focus on getting my little vlog footage, as I only had such a limited time anyway to read. And I kind of didn't want to spend the whole time just trying to read tiny text on my phone, which would stop working at some point. And thus, I made a few assumptions. One is that each of these art installations were site-specific, meaning the art pieces were made with the environment in mind. And thus, all of the art installations would have a message in them about human-made nature versus nature-made nature, that their installation is meant to contrast the environment around them, as well as say something, a critique of society, history, the environment, but also somehow turning it around to say how it fits. I feel like artsy people, especially those who live in crowded metropolitan cities, like to symbolize the desert for its openness, space, its untamed nature, freedom, and so on. So in any case, in these clips where I'm just visiting the installation, it's just my first reaction, thoughts about them, and later on in this video I'm going to go with some more specific commentary as I actually do research about them at home. Just letting you guys. And while we're paused, here's like the general overview of the installations that we visit, which is a pretty wide range of them in between all these little desert cities. On first glance, this installation reminded me of like a shading resting area, but one that doesn't have a utilitarian use, as it doesn't really shade that well. There's something that has to do with contrast here, the natural stones formed into geometric shapes and how the dried palm leaves are strung together as pillars. Perhaps its proximity and view of the windmills, Palm Springs residencies, and the visitor centers have something to do here. But then it was time to hit the road to the next installation. Passing by a very interesting sign, the art installation was easily in view. It was placed a short walks away from a children's playground in this community center. First impressions, it does give me the ooh shiny Instagram post type place that people would take pictures with, which isn't to say that's all it is, but it can stand on its own as just a pretty art piece. It kind of reminded me of Seven Magic Mountains in the outside of Las Vegas, where you have this natural concept of like rocks stuck together, but in a vibrant color, which is affected in different sunlight. Same thing here with these cartoon abstract clouds, in which the sequence give this rippling, colorful effect depending on the windiness and where the sunlight hits the structure. Squirrels everywhere. Oh, another place they have pigeons, but there's a bunch of squirrels and there would be pigeons.
time to hop back on that bus and drive through some neighborhood to get to the next installation.
Situated in a dirt lot in viewing distance of more contemporary buildings was Adobe Oasis. And if I remembered history correctly, Adobe was this building material used by many people around the world and valued for its availability to make as well as its various positive properties. And this one definitely differed than those because instead of that smooth texture, we got this kind of like mechanically done weave texture. And this, of course, these wooden stairs that led to a view. And I felt like this rough, natural material mixed with what I bet was a robot arm making this structure has to do something with the message here. Had to be something about mixing indigenous techniques with modern technology. And after that, we were kind of just dropped off near downtown Palm Springs to do whatever you want for like 2 hours. My favorite thing to do when I'm being a tourist is go walk around the downtown areas, get like a little brochure or map, not necessarily follow it, kind of flip through it, but just kind of go around enjoying my time looking at everything with no set location or purpose in mind. And that's what I did. This is going to make me sound really basic, but I love the aesthetic that downtown Palm Springs had. It had a mix of googie mid-mod 60s vibes, as well as boho, beach basic, hiker, hipster type vibes, as well as like Mexicans, desert Southwest, modern, all of that kind of mixed up in a really nice way that I can't help but love. Like that really sunny, peppy, bright, positive, Americana, California kind of vibes going for it. I loved it so much. And of course, souvenir shops are one of my favorite shops to look through, and I was really aiming to look for enamel pins, and I eventually found some. Surprisingly, not that many for Palm Springs, but a lot for Joshua Tree National Park. And the city felt so artsy. Like, yeah, some people are going to be like, wow, you're so superficial, but it's like, I love bright, positive, artsy kind of environments, okay? Now, beyond the cliff part, I didn't eat this whole day. I didn't want to get stuck on buying food, so I just got like a mango drink and kept on walking.
So right now, drinking this drink, and I'm heading to the Desert X store to see if they have enamel pin, because I think that's my favorite souvenir type. Is enamel pins as opposed to shirts. I mean, I like shirts, but they gotta be hot. It's gotta be swag. But anyway, I like enamel pins. Found one for Palm Springs, and I'm gonna find one for Desert X. Then after that, probably head back, try to find somewhere to eat. I didn't eat yet. Ooh, this is a super far walk. Like, ooh, all the way back there. All the way back here, but we're gonna make it. We're gonna make it to the Desert X store. Where we did all that walking and then they don't even have the enamel pins anymore. So I'm just gonna get this free field guide because, yeah, I just really want the enamel pins. They only have that was a plus as far as enamel pins goes. That's okay because I got the Palm Spring enamel pin that I really like. And also Joshua Tree, even though we're not going to Joshua Tree, I saw a Joshua Tree, so that counts close enough. But yeah, so I'm gonna go head back towards the art museum because I'm just gonna get the Tommy Bahamas because, yeah.
The lack of actual food sustenance and the desert heat was kind of getting to me, and I didn't really feel like eating anything big or heavy, even though I saw this really good-looking whole fried tilapia with rice. So
These tacos, just $15, as long as they're among the cheaper things I could find here. I don't want anything heavy anyway, so I don't have anywhere to store it. So I think I'm probably good here. I mean, it's good as much of a fish stock. I mean, it's nothing too special, but it's good. Like, I'm used to like mahi, like not being cooked in the middle. Like, that really salty pink style of it. So I don't think just cooked it like any other white fish. That's not good.
then it was time to head over to the art museum, as that's where we were going to meet up to go back on the bus. And honestly, the art museum looked really cool, but I just didn't have time to go look around for it because I only had 2 hours and I really wanted to spend that in the great outdoors. In any case, I did get to see all these cool palm trees, this 1 second of being in the museum, and yeah. And it was after like waiting a little bit long that the bus finally arrived at some point. It wasn't that long of a wait though, it wasn't too bad. I had my neck fan and everything. It was pretty cool.
Gosh, we made it into the bus after 2 hours at least of being straight in the sun, man. Oh my god, it's so hot. I mean, it's like the Vegas heat, but it's like Vegas heat if I wasn't a weenie and just like wasn't afraid to sweat. That's what I've been thinking lately. It's like, it's hot and you get all sweaty and gross, but it's like, I live in Las Vegas anyway. I could just take a shower. I should just get used to being in the heat, right? It's literally like the same kind of temperature than like in Vegas. I bet if I look up science, it would be just a little bit more wet that can have more plants, but I'm pretty sure it's about the same. Saying goodbye to Palm Springs, we headed out into the desert again to the city of Desert Hot Springs. And it was there that we would see the next 2 art installations. The first one being...
Interestingly, Soul Station was the only installation to feature a human form, this being Ruby, who is in the gas station, with mirror eyes looking outward, as well as this interactive piece with a conch shell, in which you can hear someone reading out poetry. Were the rhymes done by a contemporary artist, or perhaps in reference to someone in the past? I wasn't sure. Lots of metallic chrome, as if to shine light back out into the viewer to perhaps invoke some kind of introspection?
I did it. Yes. Alright, so we're gonna do a pretty lengthy hike. Alright, let's go.
The wind was super dry and super hot, like as if you're in a hot oven, but it was really a saving grace compared to if it was just the straight up sunlight beaming down, burning everybody. But it did make it hard to talk and a bit hard to walk because it like dried my mouth, put sand all over my eyes and mouth. Even though it doesn't look like a lot, it was like those tiny grains really get to you. But I pushed on because, you know, when's the next time I was going to do something like this, you know? So, yeah, to breathe. Yeah, I was kind of a task with that. But jokes aside, I figured that the message of the installation had definitely something to do with the refraction of rainbow lights. Like, this was kind of like a special material that you couldn't directly see your reflection on at first glance. As you can see that there are these reflections of people and the structure itself done in this kind of like, I don't know what to call it, like reverberated kind of way. That's probably the wrong word. I imagine that in the best of scenarios, it would be more true to the name or to breathe. Like, this would be like a relaxing, tranquil, quiet space of a installation to experience. But I would have to admit that it's kind of like the tiredness and the weather kind of like made me feel a certain way that I didn't feel very tranquil here. And it was hard to appreciate the colors and lights as it was.
I don't know if you can tell on video, but there's like a iridescent trend to it. And it's so cool. Whew.
I sort of had that feeling that people can sometimes have when they do like marathons, where they're like, wow, look at how far we've come. And I know it's only 0.2 miles, but it felt like a lot at the time, okay? Yeah, it felt like a lot. Don't judge. Actually, you could judge, but be nice. Or be mean if it's funny. Any case, it was time to hop back on that bus and go to the second to last stop. This one was, wow, okay. So after trying to figure out a while of how to get the bus in, we were able to walk down to the main entrance of this place called Sunnyland. This was a last minute addition due to the extra time that we had, and from what I can glean, it was formerly a house of renowned architects, perhaps, now used as a social space with botanical gardens, with its outdoor landscape its main draw. The visuals of the place really hit with a wham as the installation was just clear right in front of you, and the surroundings really drew my eye. The whole place was adorned with plants of various kinds, and the living pyramid itself was no exception. It was full of layers of what I assumed to be various seasonal plants and cacti, at this stage all nearing the end of their life cycles, dried with straw yellow and perhaps ready to drop seed. Beautiful yellows and blues adorned the greenery here, and it was just... And the rest of the venue was also just very gorgeous manicured gardens like this labyrinth over here. And of course, I had a look at the gift shop since there was one, and yeah, it had really cute art. And of course, my eye was drawn to all the landscape art pieces, these little mini puzzles, which is like one of the last time I saw a puzzle, right? And of course, and there's these recycled material animal sculpture things, and of course, I had a peep at the giraffe. It was a bit out of my price range, but it was really cool. And throughout Sunnyland, there was informational boards talking about the place, its history, its sustainability, things about its nature, and honestly really cool stuff I wish I had more time to look at and wouldn't mind visiting again. And towards the exit door, which is the same thing as the entrance, they had this really cool topographical map where you could feel the elevation differences along the whole planned area. Then it was time to leave. So you'd walk along this white concrete sidewalk to a ribbon serpentine-like wall, which had several metallic beams that project different text and images. It probably a callback to sundials of times past, but not gonna lie, this exhibit felt short for me. It was kind of like too literal, and I didn't really feel anything going into this one. In any case, it was time to go back on that bus to go head home, but we stopped at a gas station first. There was some promotional deal that made it the better choice to just get 3 Gatorades instead of 1, so I just took it as an opportunity to go ahead and try all of them, because I felt like I sweated out a lot. So RIP to the calories I lost, because I probably gave them back. And they kind of taste like nothing after a while, but I did like the blue cherry better than the rest. Then it was time to hit that open road again. I closed my eyes as this was the same exact route I would take to go from SoCal back to Las Vegas, and I tried not to think about it too hard, not to think about, I didn't get to the beach or anything, blah, 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 blah. Anyway, so yeah, passing by all that, back to Barstow. So we made it to Barstow Station again at 6 p.m., which was like an hour before it closed. And I wasn't planning on buying anything, so I didn't. I was just very curious what the inside of the place looked like. There are various different little shops of standard gas station roadside type things, as well as some fast food eateries. A lot of the place was either closed or blocked off. And I don't know, I was just nosy. I just wanted to see what was going on in here, so. But in any case, it was time to hit that open road one last time to Vegas. And it felt like the trip ended so fast, like I was barely gone. And yeah, in the blink of an eye, we were back at Sunset Park, but this time there were lights because it was still open. And in any case, it was time to say goodbye to Sunset Park and make that drive back home. And boy, was I tired. I desperately wanted to shower, but I had to say hello to some funky little guys that I have. And say hello to my main son boy, who wasn't all too happy with me for being gone again, but it was okay. I tried to make it up for him in the next phase. When we were at To Breathe, we were encouraged to make an eclectic poem or other kinds of artistic expression to talk about the project that we saw. But personally, that wasn't for me, so instead I get to make this video. As I said, we were not giving an itinerary for the trip, and things developed as the day went by. So I honestly didn't have much to go on when observing these pieces in real life. But now from the comfort of my room with AC blasting and some sleep, I can go back and while editing this video, go ahead and research just a little bit about the artist and work involved. So, opinion that might make people upset. Alert. Here's my honest opinion of a lot of this conceptual, abstract thinking kind of art, based on my experiences in classroom settings, speaking with artists of the field and so on. I admit I'm not the most super knowledgeable, interested, or open-minded for a lot of this kind of stuff. I feel like these kinds of art are made generally by people from upper social and economic class who have family or parents that delve into this kind of stuff already with that kind of support, and hailing from metropolitan cities such as New York City or LA, and put a lot of emphasis on the manner of curation and material of the work to talk about various sociological topics. And in all of this, try to shove as many complicated, convoluted revelations as possible to justify the price point. And of course, this is all a very broad and unfair generalization, but I feel like I should probably give my own perspective of my own personal knee-jerk bias reaction, as it gives more background on my thoughts, I guess. And of course, I feel like it's only fair if other people have their opinions of my own art as well. You can say, well, you're a shell for capitalistic fighting robots that expound upon the themes of war and injustice for corporate profit and material consumption, furthering the machine with the creation of fan art, spending my years writing the coattails of regurgitated mythologies created by soulless corporations. And for that I say, 1, true. It's low-key kind of true. And 2, this is a very straw man argument, but I feel like, why not put it out there? 3, you and I can go back on and forth on why we are both wrong, why we are both right, in that how our interests and concept of what is art, what is illustration, what is worth it, and so on and so forth, are a lot more nuanced and rich in meaning and story than the other things. But, in the end, we are both like annoying people with creative hearts arguing banalities in the face of the world of today. But I digress. With this mix of mid-mod architecture and contemporary architecture to calls to old Hollywood, to open displays of LGBTQ pride and various BLM murals, and boho aesthetic, Latin aesthetic, and so on and so forth, this hodgepodge, it really did feel like the kind of place that something artsy-ish, such as Desert X, would take place. And as stated on the Desert X site, the exhibition reflects on the desert's deep time evolutions, reframing ideas and wilderness, and exploring themes of indigenous futurism, design activism, colonial power asymmetries, the impress of humanity on the land, and the role of emerging technologies in our contemporary society. So, very liberal arts, English, sociology, professor, college class type talk. And I didn't necessarily look this up prior, but I could kind of get those vibes, to be honest, even without looking at what Desert X was specifically. I went into this with a blank slate and being interested in actually learning and understanding, if I don't necessarily agree at some points. But, it probably would have made for a more conductive experience if I did do prior research. And, any case, let's don on my liberal arts thinking cap and give a little rethinking towards these installations that I've seen this past weekend. Kapwani incorporates the African diaspora in her works, which widely varies in medium. Here, she went to invoke the imagery of a quilt with a specific patterning, along with the imagery of a loose sense of support to give a critique on the appearance and promotion of the sense of security in a society where there really isn't a true point of security throughout various points in history. the use of the dried palm fronds refers to palm strings, which in itself has its troubled history with discrimination and racism. And its placement, the placement of the installation near the visitor center and overlooking the rest of the valley probably has a very intentional meaning. It's a reminder of the dark past of this kitschy tourist town. In the 1930s, the downtown area known as Section 14 became home to Black, Latino, Filipino, Chinese, and Japanese residents in the 40s due to discrimination throughout the valley. In 1959, there was a federal law that allowed 99-year leases on Indian-owned land, which made it a real steal to sell to developers. And this led to forced evictions and homes being set ablaze and or demolished without warning. So the installation in a way speaks to those topics, how these things haven't necessarily gone away and how history has yet to really repair those kind of relations that has happened in the past. As artists like Kapwani go and make pieces that talk about this, it's to bring awareness in a way that's not so direct, but it speaks to a certain kind of person in the imagery and the concentration behind the piece. Now, this sign of Sikawet wasn't really technically a part of Desert X. I just thought it was a very interesting piece to point out, and this was like the only webpage I can find that even talks about this. So basically, yeah, this is a yellow road sign, has a squirrel on it, or at least that's what I assume, based on the squirrels that are running around this park. And it has the word Sikawet. I'm probably saying it wrong, but I can't find a pronunciation anywhere. It is a word from the Kahuya language, or, the language of the people who are indigenous to this valley. And I can only assume that this sign means squirrel, because this is, there's no information other than this, but I thought it was really neat to point out. And yes, there were many Sikawets, there were many of them, as I pointed out upon my reaction to visiting the place. Very accurate sign. Sanford Biggers takes inspiration from his Los Angeles background and his time in Japan, and in his works references African culture, spirituality, Buddhism, leading to this piece as we see here. With Unsui, or mirror, he created both wonderfully shimmery imagery to evoke the sense of free movement and dreams, but also has made a seamless way to tie it back to Black history, if you know, as the Unity Center the installation resides near was established due to the events of the aforementioned Section 14. This is, in fact, his first foray into using this cartoon version of a cloud in his art piece. In fact, he's made a Unsui before, but with more than 2 clouds. And in this case, as well as then, he kind of uses the Unsui in reference to Buddhist tradition, in that people who practice Zen, they're supposed to move through life as clouds move through the sky, not being tethered down or limited by the ground or physical formality. It is as if to say that where you started, where your foundation can't change, but don't let it keep you grounded. Don't let it keep you from going beyond. And while you're being free in limitless, shine while you're at it. Ronald Rael's Adobe Oasis is kind of interesting in that Ronald himself has both an art and an environmental architecture background, with his emphasis being in researching the building wisdom of indigenous groups and seeing how that wisdom can be used with the technology of today. I was correct in assuming that a robot arm was used in the manufacturing of this installation. As I said before, Adobe is this building material used throughout the world, and he uses it here along with the robot arm to combine the modern with the traditional. And honestly, I'm not sure how viable such a process would be, such as like the durability of Adobe in wet climates or the benefits of using a robot arm versus the traditional Adobe house method made by human hands. But it is nevertheless an interesting concept that questions how can we as a society be more sustainable, more eco-conscious as we see this Adobe Oasis as it contrasts the architecture that surrounds it, but still in itself gives credence to the mountains and the nature behind it as well. This piece, if the title wasn't obvious enough, was meant to be seen as a pit stop of the soul. The use of reclaimed materials as well as the whole objects and the collaboration in its creation act as a whole to give a collective sense of peace and hope, but a drive to keep on moving after. The poetry spoken on the seashell phone was written and read by Harriet Mullen, who is a poet who speaks on Black history and culture. Alison Saar as well delves into the topic of the Black diaspora and other topics that influence the African American experience. The use of Ruby, the main character of here, is supposed to inspire the sense of awe, of strength, of endurance, but as well as a reflection of the self. All that being said, I personally didn't quite engage with this installation just because I don't put responsibilities or faith or hope in physical objects and observing them. But nevertheless, it is a very interesting installation with a very defined aesthetic and audience that do feel attuned to it. So, a neat little history fact I found out while researching. Coachella was, in fact, originally supposed to be named Conchilla, or Land of the Little Shells. So, with this piece to breathe, it has this spiral shape. Billions of years ago, the Coachella Valley, as with a lot of deserts, were underwater. Crustaceans, with their iridescent inner shells, give off that rainbow shine when you look inside. They live in their shells, but in order to keep living, to keep breathing, they have to venture at least a little outward to keep on moving, to keep sustaining themselves, to keep breathing. Kimsooja's work often plays with light and color, and considering the installation's page has an emphasis on interconnected cycles and circular movements in life, how times keep moving onward, from the spiral-shelled creatures that used to roam the salty waters that once was, to the sun seemingly spinning and rising and falling, each affecting the view of this installation. There's a lot to be said. I personally didn't feel as many thoughts as I did in person or in the immediate time afterwards, probably due to this kind of sense of tiredness I had throughout the day, or just, my lack of understanding the context of the art piece. But I imagine perhaps during a sunrise and sunset, or if viewed over a span of time, the colors and the reflections of the light would hit harder. And honestly, while editing this video, I didn't even realize how the colors refracted from behind me when I'm doing those, selfie shots. I didn't even get to acknowledge those in person. And I think that's so interesting how they do point inward yet outward at the same time. And while I didn't get the sense of tranquility or peace of this installation, I kind of understand what it means to breathe. It means to keep on moving, to come inward, but then to also go outward. It's kind of funny how Agnes's video on Desert X opens with her remarking how most people would think or assume the pyramid shape in her works has something to do with the ancient Egyptians. Honestly, I love that it actually has nothing to do with the Egyptians at all. Because honestly, I'm tired of seeing pyramids and such kind of iconography used for very straightforward things that you keep beating the head over with, such as, example, pyramids that talk about religion, beliefs, or conspiracies. So it was a really nice change of pace to see that, in fact, that's not what it's for. Upon research, I learned that Angnes was the one who made the famous wheat field a confrontational conceptual piece. I remember about learning this piece in art history classes. So essentially, this was a project from 1982 where a field of wheat was planted near Wall Street and the World Trade Center on what was an empty landfill but had a high value for real estate because of location. And this brought layers of awareness to the inequalities of society, the paradox of urban and rural development, and gave a point to question the idea of quote-unquote wasting valuable real estate by planting wheat. That to make money, to make more infrastructure was somehow more valuable than making food for those around and those beyond. After the end of that installation's life of 4 months, the wheat was harvested and its seed was sent around the world, continuing to make its impact, as one imagines the imagery of a seed growing and spreading tends to do. It was really interesting to come to this realization. As honestly, in case you haven't been noticing, this was in fact my favorite piece, and in my own personal life, I've been really interested in the topics of the environment, water and waste management, and climate change. So yeah, this was my favorite piece of the trip, and I wish I could have stayed around to look longer. During the time I was observing the living pyramid in person, I remarked that it would have been interesting to see this installation in its prime, when perhaps all the plants just so happened to synchronize into a great green bloom. But upon further thinking, I take back this statement. The flowers, I believe, were the self-seeding types. I couldn't find specific details of a lot of these installations online, so I just kind of like making assumptions, right? But what I assume, the flowers at least, were self-seeding, and they were left to wither as they were and grow as they will. And so, in concept, this art piece can keep going until their season was done. And as people who were visiting on the second to last day of Desert X, we were witness to the last natural stage, the last natural process of this installation. The flowers were dying, the stems a hue of straw yellow that matched the colors of wheat, that matched the colors of dried grass, that matched the plains, that matched the natural dryness of a desert, and the bright, buttery popcorn-like flowers of the tree behind acted as a interesting contrast, as those flowers were in their bloom as well and falling down in a different sort of way. The living pyramid was, in fact, in its great yellow bloom, its beautiful but last hurrah. I just didn't realize it at the time. My opinions after researching more about Sarah Mehoyas' Truth Arrives in Slanted Beans didn't really change with the context. It was a piece made with the theme of technology, the ancient technology of sundials and sun reflections, as well as combining it with metal created with modern technology with the aid of algorithms that help create the light effects to give, the literal effect of the word truth being on slanted beams. In the video, as presented on Desert X, she kind of emphasizes on not lying and that being the truth of what it is. And it is. It's really kind of a straightforward piece that kind of speaks to itself. I'm not sure what kind of deeper themes there could have been. Maybe I'm missing it. The artist incorporates imagery of nature as well as light, holograms, and technology in her normal works, and as well as incorporates her economics background and interest in emerging technologies by being heavily involved in cryptocurrencies, NFTs, and AI. And as someone has very strong convictions and opinions on those, it just kind of made me not interested in any further analysis of her work. It just not for me. Okay, now thoughts on the Clark County Public Arts and the way they hosted this trip. All in all, I really enjoyed this ride into the desert. Some critiques just to get it over with. I understand that it was like the first time that they're having such an event, so honestly these don't really bother me too much, but I feel like it should be stated, just in case anyone was interested in knowing how it felt like logistically. I admit I kind of had some unwary vibes with this. There was like no advertising for this event other than the 2 posts on Instagram, like not on their website or their Facebook. There was really no information given as to who was leading the event and what to expect as far as itinerary or stops. Like I said, I only got the itinerary and the contact info of the leader of the group the day of, like that very morning when we got on the bus. Which is like, yeah, those are kind of things that you'd want to know beforehand so you can plan and at least feel ready, you know what I mean? And driving up in the pitch darkness of Sunset Park to find the administration building, it was like, ooh, okay, I really hope this is real. Like, I don't know anyone who worked for the Clark County Public Arts or knew anybody who was going, so I was like, oh. In any case, I was just kind of hoping that the Clark County Public Arts Instagram was official and that the trip was really going to happen and that I wasn't just being dropped off at 3 a.m. at Sunset Park in the pitch dark for like no reason. But all in all, I felt like I got my $5 worth of value, even more so. If other such expeditions were offered again by the Clark County Public Arts, I would definitely be interested in going. I mean, honestly, I never saw myself going to Palm Springs or willingly walking in the heat. For me, it's just like going into a very similar desert that in which I live. But honestly, like, it's quite different. It's really nice to see different places in general, right? And it's nice to have a compact little taste of the variety of environments in California. And it really lended itself as a vehicle to engage with the kind of art and various subject matters that I wouldn't engage on my own. And I would like to thank Stephanie for acting as a host and the 2 bus drivers, of which I forgot to write down their names, but I know one of them was going to move on to trucking, so I wish her the best. And a big thanks to Clark County Public Arts for making this trip possible. Like, I have no idea how you made this possible because, like, oh my goodness, I can't imagine that's a cheap bus. Anyway. But yeah, I found this really fun. I don't know if they're gonna have some event again for other Clark County residents to hop on again, but I think it was fun as long as you're very like open-minded, loose, and ready to go. Yeah, it was really fun. So, yep. Thank you for all involved with putting it together, and thank you all who decided to watch and listen to me talk about this little trip. It's not my usual kind of video to make, as I'm not like getting brain rot about, like Transformers or something like that, but I do want to expand my tastes and give my opinions on things because this is Reno Varka channel. This isn't like, just fandom only channel or whatever. It's my opinion. I get to put whatever I want. But anyway, that's all for today. Thank you so much, and yeah, see you in the next video.